Hey, this is Noah. I'm going to talk about something kind of niche. The thought process that I have behind the videos that I do is that this is just what I do. I talk about video games and Lord knows what else to other people, and this is just how I am. And this is sort of my nuanced solution of like, oh, well, if I do this anyway, why don't I just record videos about it? But what's funny is, the moment that I was like, oh, maybe I should try to, be consistent and do this regularly, I need to come up with things to talk about. All of a sudden now it's really hard. But one of the things I did come up with was a very niche conversation point. And I'm going to try to explain this. There's a minor thing that gets on my nerves, and it pretty much starts with exclusives that don't stick around and don't stay exclusive. As just a beginner's baby example, let's use Octopath Traveler on Nintendo Switch. I remember when that game first came out, I might be wrong, but I believe it was published by Nintendo on the Switch. So I actually bought that game, and I have been giving it a shot, only for me to discover about a few months later that it was it was timed exclusive. And then it came out on PC and other platforms, and I think it even came out on Google Stadia. In a weird sort of way, it felt like an unintentional betrayal, because part of the reason why I bought into it was because it was like, okay, this is a reason for me to get this because it's only on this platform. And then it comes out on the other platforms. And I'm like, well, this doesn't feel unique anymore. It doesn't devalue the game at all by any means. It just feels like I have less reason to play it. And ever since then, quite literally, and I can prove this, I have not gotten past the point in the game that I did. Right? I have a list of games I've probably beaten since then. I have not looked back. It also doesn't help that Bryant has it. I think sometimes I loan my games out to people and I completely forget that I did. Like, I just remembered just now that I loaned out Sonic Forces to my cousin. I think I'm okay in forgetting that. I think part of that thought process comes from this idea that I'll just skip to an example of why this sort of thing can affect me. I see a lot of people talking about how, like, if a game was being published by a major company or something, and then the creators get the rights and they go and make the game on their own, like sequels or something, that people will still support it. But I find that kind of hard for some reason. And by for some reason, I mean because it seems shallow, but not having it being published by the original company, that branding, even though it's being made by the same people, the people who originally were doing it, it feels weird. And this is probably a very strong, hot take. But like, just as an example, I've been struggling to play through Shenmue. I started enjoying the story, and then it stops, and then I started enjoying the story, and then it stops. I'm about like 4.5 hours in, and now I'm at the part where I have to get the part-time job as a forklift driver, and I'm like, well, this stuttered to a stop immediately. Although I'm told this is probably the best part of the game. Whatever. Shenmue 1 and 2 were originally published by Sega on the Dreamcast and the Xbox. And on the PC HD remaster and on the other platforms that it was on, it is still Sega. They own the rights to those games. But Yu Suzuki, the man who created Shenmue, I guess still has the rights to the games and is the one who created Shenmue 3. But Shenmue 3 is not published by Sega and has no branding at all. It was published by Deep Silver, the people who published Metro 2033, which is weird to think about. And so I'm at this weird point, and this is probably why I started thinking about this, where I'm sitting here playing through Shenmue 1, and I have Shenmue 2, and Shenmue 3 right now just released on Steam, and it's on sale. I'm like, I want to get this, in theory, because I have the other two, but do I really want to play this? I'd imagine this is probably akin to people who are like really nationalist with their countries, and somebody who would refuse to buy cars from Japan even though they might be objectively better than ones produced in the USA. I don't know anything about cars, please don't come for me. I can't justify the way that I think about that stuff, but it still feels like strange. I kind of wish I wasn't that way. I wish I could feel just more like, yeah, I'll just play the game, whatever. Like, can you imagine if the creators... Like, think about this for a minute. Imagine if Shigeru Miyamoto was no longer tied to Nintendo, quit Nintendo and started his own game company, and started making Mario games on his own, Maybe The Legend of Zelda 2. That would be weird, right? That's all I got to talk about. If you like this video for some reason, like the video. If you feel like getting more of me just talking about garbage, subscribe. This is Noah. I don't even know what to plug at this point because I talked about like 4 different things. So I'm just gonna go. See ya.